All right, welcome to another Small Business Pivots. Today we have a very special guest from around the world, and as I say week to week, only the business owner can pronounce their name and their business like they can. So tell us your name, where you're from, what you do.
Okay, my name is Joe Rando. That's my real name, even though I know it's a millennial. Uh, you know, I don't even know what to call it, but it is my real name, and my company is called LifeStarr, and we help solopreneurs build businesses that serve their lives.
Wow. There's not many of those, are there, out there? Solopreneurs?
Solopreneurs, yeah. Well, what we call solopreneurs are anybody with a one-person business. Somebody that there's either no or one W-2, and there's somewhere, depending on who you listen to, if you count the side businesses, 60 to 70 million in the U.S. So
That's
just a
amazing.
couple.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's just growing ever since the pandemic.
Every
People
time there's a
getting laid off
back
and
to the
things.
office order, new people coming in.
Yep. Yeah. That is really, that is the truth. Well, how do you think we're going to help our listeners today before we introduce the show?
Well, I've been an entrepreneur and a solopreneur since 1990. And have done some really cool things and some really dumb things. Had a business actually fail, lost a lot of money, but I've had some successes. And I feel like I've learned a couple of things, and I really like sharing those things with people.
Fantastic. That's what this show is all about, is small business pivots. So listeners, get your ears ready. We got a lot of insights to talk about today. We're going to introduce the show and we'll be right back. Welcome to Small Business Pivots, a podcast produced for small business owners. I'm your host, Michael Morrison, founder and CEO of Boss, where we make business ownership simplified for success. Our business is helping yours grow. Boss offers business loans with business coaching support. Apply in minutes and get approved and funded in as little as 24 to 48 hours at businessownershipsimplified.com. All right, welcome back to Small Business Pivots. We have a very special guest named Joe, and that is his real name. So tell us, let's start with your journey of life, because you said you've gone through a lot of things in the business world, and a lot of people, because of trials and tribulations, they just can't overcome things. They get imposter syndrome. They don't have any self-worth. Let's talk about your upbringing, if you don't mind, just a small bit, so that we can kind of align with where you are today.
Okay, so my dad was in the restaurant business from the time I was born. The family had a restaurant. He was very motivated guy. Went off I think he was 30, 31 years old, started his own restaurant, did $550,000 worth of business in the first year, which equates to many millions of dollars in current day dollars. And this was 63. So, very, very smart guy. Unfortunately, didn't have good lawyers. The people that he was leasing the space from saw how successful it was and booted him out. Learned his lesson, went off to become a hotel guy, bought hotels with a partner, and did quite well for himself. So I grew up in that kind of an environment where I had a dad who wasn't around all the time because he was working, but was very much an entrepreneur. And so that was not foreign to me. I had no interest in the hotel business. It was much too boring, and wound up eventually getting involved in developing shopping centers. And that I liked because it was more project based. I didn't like the every day is the same kind of thing. That was the best scenario in a hotel business, was every day is the same as the day before. No drama. And shopping center development, I was really intrigued with because, and this was going back to 1990 when the Home Depot was expanding and some of these other big box retailers. So there was opportunity. And the result there was that you would work really hard on this thing and eventually get it done, and then it was just kind of like collect the money and pay the mortgage, which I liked that model because then you could go off and do something else interesting. I guess technically I don't have ADHD, but I kind of have that mindset of like, let's do something new now. So that's in my kind of getting started into business in a nutshell.
Well, I do have some entrepreneurs that would love to get into commercial real estate. How did you or what suggestions would you have for them to find funding to do that? Because that takes a larger bucket of capital than just starting a business.
Yeah. So what happened with me was 1990, for people that are old enough to remember, was a very bad time for real estate in general. There was a crash in 88, 89. And there was a lot of money had flowed in, a lot of dumb lenders loaning money to dumb projects, and those projects failed. And so there was all this real estate being owned by the banks, and nothing was happening. There was no financing. So I went to a guy that owned a big piece of land that my software, I had developed some software, we'll talk about that after, to figure out where to put shopping centers. And it said this was a good location. And I got to know this guy, and we became we became friends, really. But he basically wanted a lot of money for his land. And so I said, hey, give me the chance to make your land worth that much money, and I'll give you that much money. So he basically let me work on this thing on the cheap. And I was able to go and get permits and find tenants and get this thing all put together without having to spend a fortune on buying the land or optioning the land or something like that. The world is not like that. Real estate's expensive. Construction costs are ridiculous. And one of the reasons I'm out of the commercial real estate business right now is because I don't see the opportunity that was there before. And it'll come back around. I might not be of a mind to get involved again, but that was the story. There was making good things come out of bad times, and that's I think a running theme in my life in real estate is that the bad times are when you can make the good deals.
Yeah,
that would be my advice.
Yeah, that also goes along with being adaptable or problem solving, limitations, being creative. As entrepreneurs, those are all critical thinking that we all need to have, or kind of look at things differently. We typically hear the status quo of you need to go get a bank loan or get a group of people that have money, and you went out, just figured out how to do it because that's what you wanted.
Yeah, and it was the right time for that. I mean, the biggest thing, I think, if I had any competitive advantage, it was the fact that I have a kind of a mathy background, and everybody was looking at real estate. I mean, literally it was the Wall Street Journal had a headline that said, "Is real estate dead as an investment?" I mean, that's how bad things were. And so people were so despondent. And they take a ruler, right? And they go, "Oh, it was here and it was here." And they put the ruler and they go, or when things are going up, they put the here and here. And, "Oh, look, the sky's the limit." And I'm like, I keep a French curve around because it's doing this and it's going to do that. And so you always have to be confident that whatever is happening will not be happening forever. So it's really important to look and say, okay, this is a really bad market right now. And goes for the stock market too. This is really bad. But if it's a company that's been successful over years and the industry is off, well, that's probably going to come back unless if they're making buggy whips or whatever back in the day.
Yeah.
But so there are structural changes. But if healthcare is down, well, guess what? Healthcare is not going away. So that's how I think about this kind of thing. Is that what goes up must come down, and vice versa.
Yeah, there's got to be a demand. Well, let's talk about the software then, because it sounds like we're kind of moving into a serial entrepreneur. And you mentioned software that we talk about. So let's talk about that, and then we'll kind of get back to some pivots that you learned along the way.
Great. So yeah, I was getting an MBA because I wanted to start a business, and my father convinced me that I was not going to fail for technology reasons. I was going to fail for not knowing how to run a business. So I did that, and to get the MBA, I had to do a bunch of independent studies for various reasons. And so I wrote some software to figure out where to put retail. So it would you could put a location in, and put in the location of all the other competitors, and put in information about from the census about population or income or whatever, and it would tell you how that store would do. Or predict, at least, to try to tell you. And so when I got out of school and started the real estate thing, I wrote the software. I did a better job, wrote it up, made it really robust, and was using it to evaluate pieces of land. And what happened was that professor I worked under was giving talks, because professors go out and give talks, and somebody from a big mall developer at the day, a company called DeBartolo, I think they own the 49ers, and I think they sold to Simon eventually, but they heard about it, called me, and wanted to license it. And I'm like, hey, the world just beat a path to my door. And this was 1994. So I'm like, great. So I, get all excited. I start a company, create a corporation, and sign the license deal with these guys, and I hire a programmer to help me with it, and then I hire a sales and marketing guy. It just right in there, got everything going. We get all the pieces put together, get our first sale be after this guy, after that the Barlow company was for 6 figures a year, and just recurring revenue. So every year they were going to give us 6 figures. We were probably going to keep, I'm going to say probably 60% of that was going to be, gross profit from our costs, maybe a little more. And so we're just like, we're on our way. This is great. Here we go. And then something happened. It was called the internet. and all of a sudden, every retailer and retail developer in the world stopped worrying about buying technology to figure out where to started worrying about whether there were going to be stores, and worrying about how they were going to get their online presence going and what was going to happen. And we did not make another sale.
Wow.
And I eventually had to pivot to being a service bureau, because they still needed answers. So the real estate departments would basically pay us to do a study for them. And I desperately didn't want to be in the service business. I liked this, what we would now call the SaaS business, software as a service, but was then, nobody had that name. But so we would I had employees, and I said, okay, we got to do something. So we pivoted to the service bureau, and it couldn't make money. And they wouldn't pay enough to cover the cost of doing it right. I didn't want to do it wrong. So I shut it down, laid everybody off and shut the business down, which was really painful. And that was I made it to 1999 before I had to do that. So had a 5-year run of excitement into,
yeah.
But you can't fight these mega trends. If I completely missed out on the whole internet, the first wave of the internet, which is probably good, because a lot of people I know ended up going bust. But I did it in my own special way.
Was that referred to the .com, or was that afterwards?
The .com
Yeah.
boom and crash.
Yeah.
And I had one of my best friends had an $80 million deal on the table for his business. Wow. And the thing crashed before they closed, and it went away.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Well, we have what now, 26 years from that year to now. So let's keep rolling with your story. we got a lot of years here to go.
So it was interesting, because I shut the business down, and almost all the people that were working, one guy went over to CVS, the pharmacy chain, to help them kind of develop a market research department. And he ended up bringing in all the other people. So most of the, with the exception of like the sales guy, ended up at CVS creating their market research department. And, with my blessing, they built out some of the tech that we had already built, and started expanding CVS across the country. So it was kind of, financially it stunk, but it was kind of a little proud moment to see this stuff actually going out and doing something. So one of the guys that went to CVS, a guy named Bill Dakey, called me up and said, hey, I think the world has changed. Do you want to give it a go? And another go. And I said, yeah, let's do it. So he came over. I had kept that one customer I told you about from before. I had kept them this entire time. So we basically transitioned them. So we started this new business with one customer, and with one guy taking a paycheck and me not taking a paycheck. We were actually profitable when we started this. And so we locked him away in the back room, and he started coding and created a really great product. And we started trying to sell it. And we were both the really terrible salespeople. We were good at our tech, but we were bad salespeople. I've since studied sales and learned a lot about it. But we we picked up a few more customers just because people that really understood what we were doing. But what we were doing basically was kind of taking an industry that was really kind of focused around desktop applications and spreadsheets of data stored on people's hard disks and third-party consultants giving opinions, and we were building out kind of an enterprise software solution where there was none and where the market didn't understand it. And so the idea was, instead of having, this database on Bob's hard disk in an Excel spreadsheet, you have it in an enterprise database on a server that people have access to as they need to, and it's more secure and et cetera. So we had a new vision. That's the important thing about how this stuff should run. And it took a long time to get the world to kind of see the vision. So we started this really in 2004. Had probably 2 customers until 2009, but they were really good customers, so it was fine. But then we started hiring some people, and hired a salesperson. And by the time we sold the business in 2020, we had, I think, 80 customers. So, but the trick was, and the hard part is, if you're doing something new or different, it's not very easy to get people to understand what you're doing, that why they should do it, especially if you're like we were, and kind of going in and going, well, it's got an enterprise database and it's this and it's that and it does this and it does, and people just go, I'm too busy. But if you go in and you say, how when you try to go into the real estate committee and 3 people come in with 3 different answers about how well the store is going to do at that location, that stinks, right? Well, if you have our system, everybody will have the same answer because they'll be using the same data. And now you can start to get people, oh my God, I can go in there. Or how you spent $8,000 evaluating 10 sites each, so you wasted $80,000 in the last quarter looking at sites you didn't want to do? What if we could turn that into $5,000 instead of $80,000? Oh, so that's, learning to speak in the context of the pain points of the customer instead of speaking in terms of what we do, or what our thing does, or what we do, is a really hard lesson for most entrepreneurs and solopreneurs, because we just were so close to what we do. And yet, people don't care what we do. They care what, we can do for them. How can we make their lives better, make their pain points go away? Because that's the other thing. Something I learned recently that I really like is, you go in and it's way easier to sell painkillers than vitamins.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's just brilliant. I don't know who made that up, but it is so true. And thinking in terms of killing people's pain, getting rid of people's pain, will really get a lot more attention.
Yeah, how it can change their life. Kind of like the painkillers, I can solve you will feel different. These vitamins, you're not going to feel different. You might live longer, but you could also be hit by a bus in between there,
Exactly. And it's just, even if I, take a vitamin and feel a little better, I think maybe I feel a little better. Great. Yeah. But if I've got if I'm in pain and literally, this is true. I woke up with a sinus infection this morning. My head was pounding. I took some Advil, I love Advil because I feel so much better now than I did this morning. And so, I got some vitamins over here and they're great, but I never feel the way about my vitamins as I do about my Advil, boy.
Well, that's a powerful message for almost every business owner, because we get so stuck in it can do this, it can do that. Nobody cares, what it can do. Vitamins, they can make you live longer, have healthier blood pressure. You don't care. How's it going to make me feel different?
Right.
Addictions, drug dealers and everything else. That's how they get addicted.
Perfect. Yeah.
Makes
now
them feel
you're
different.
in pain. Exactly. And you put them in, basically you're in pain, right?
Yeah.
But I just, I don't know if you've ever read that $100 million offers, Alex Hormozy.
I haven't. No.
Yeah. He talks a lot about this, of, focusing on pain points. And just, really, really going through all the reasons that the pain that they feel, and the reasons that they don't feel like they can do whatever it is that you want to get them to do. And if you can solve those problems and those pain points and speak to them in those terms, you'll get a lot better response. And, I think it's very true.
Yeah, what was that book again for our
It's
listeners?
called $100 Million Offers,
Okay, great.
Alex Hormozy.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a really interesting book, and I'm not sure how many businesses can't get something out of it. I mean, he focuses on kind of high ticket items, which I'm not doing right now. I'm doing a relatively low ticket item, but I still feel like I got something out of it. His whole thing is if you do it a certain way, you can charge a lot more for what you do than if you just end up being one of the crowd. And I totally agree with that. But what I'm trying to do is something where I don't want to be high priced. I want to be low priced so that lots of people can afford it. But it's still added value to what I'm doing.
Absolutely. And that brings up a good point because a lot of our listeners, like myself, are not very studious. And so we go reading a book and we're like, I can't remember all this. It's chapter or chat. Just take one or two things from the book, and
Yeah.
make it applicable. You don't have to do just because the book was written doesn't mean everything in it's going to work for you, right?
Right. Yeah, and that's true. And this is really just a single process that you could do over months if you wanted to. It's very easy reading. It's not a dense book. It's got, a lot of little drawings and large font. It would probably be a booklet if you wrote it the way a lot of books are written.
Yeah,
But
especially with AI.
a lot of great books are short because they're just giving you some good piece of advice, and a lot of times people have to write fluff around it just to get the publisher to publish it. But another
Yeah.
one is Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller.
Don Miller, yeah.
Yeah, and that's another one where I read that book and I'm like, this is really actionable and can make such a difference in terms of your ability to kind of attract
It's amazing
customers.
when you get around an author, you're like, you haven't heard of him or her, because once you get around one, you kind of follow
Right.
them. And
Follow them. Yep.
Don Miller, if listeners haven't heard of him, he has a lot of great books. I still talk to business owners that have not heard of him or the Story Brand at all. I think he has probably 4 books now that are probably number
I'm
one
not sure.
in the
I'm not
top
sure
three
because
or
I'm
four.
I'm I've got a very large pile of books that I need to read, and it's tough right now. I'm actually writing a book right now. I'm in the process of writing Solopreneur Business for Dummies with my fractional CMO Carly Reese. But yeah,
Very
we're
cool.
going to put out. There was no book for solopreneurs, and Wiley decided that they could do a dummies book on this topic, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's a very good book. So for the plug, any time commitment, end of 25,
oh,
26.
it's coming out in September of
Okay,
25. Yeah, September.
fantastic. We'll put that in the show notes for our listeners and
Cool.
hopefully they'll stay engaged and follow you. Before we move to a next business, because these are technology based, and I know we have some tech entrepreneurs. You're listening to Small Business Pivots. This podcast is produced by my company, Boss. Our business is helping yours grow. Boss offers business loans with business coaching support. Apply in minutes and get approved and funded in as little as 24 to 48 hours at businessownershipsimplified.com. If you're enjoying this podcast, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and share it as well. Now let's get back to our special guest. Before we move to a next business, because these are technology based, and I know we have some tech entrepreneurs, what were some of the things you learned, things that you wouldn't do again, or things that were detrimental, or things you would have done? Because technology in that industry is a little different than a brick and mortar retail contractor, things like that. So for our
Yeah.
listeners that are in that space, any insights you could share on that?
Well, I think so. Yeah. I mean, I've not been I've been a contractor, but more a technology contractor. I've done a few solopreneur businesses, but just in general terms, let's see. If we're talking entrepreneurs, if we're talking people that are hiring, the one thing that I've said, to anybody that asks or anybody that'll listen is hire people smarter than you. If you can have a meeting with your staff on topics related to what they're doing and be the dumb one, you're being successful. That's the way to be. So, there are people that have egos that make them afraid to hire people smarter than them. I've fortunately never had that problem because I'm not very good at a lot of things.
Yeah.
But
I'm in your
so
camp.
yeah, I'm like, I need to hire a controller. I want somebody that's way better at accounting than me.
Yeah.
I want to hire somebody that's going to do marketing. I want somebody that's way better at marketing than me. And it's worked really well. So that's the first thing is that, hire the smartest person you can find, and then trust them. I mean, guide them, point them in the right direction, but you got to trust them. If you're second guessing them or micromanaging them, they won't stay around. But if you don't, I have people. I haven't talked about it yet, but I have a property management company that have been with me for literally 30 years.
Wow. That's incredible these
Literally
days.
30 years. Yeah, and I tend to keep people around because I like I said, I hire people that are smart, and then I trust them to do smart things, and they don't want to lose that. You know,
Yeah.
they don't want to lose that. That's what smart people want, is the ability to do a good work. So that's one piece of advice. The other one is, make yourself special. Find some way to make yourself, your business, whatever it is, stand out from the crowd. And that could be niching down on an industry, niching down on a geography, niching down on a pain point, something, but find some ways to kind of stand out and do something where a smaller group of people will look and go, that's who I want. Because then, number one, you get the attention, you get the deals. But two, you can usually charge a little more because you're solving specific problems for specific people. So if I come out and say, I make websites for businesses. Okay, well, a lot of people do that. So I'm now competing with, 1,000 other people. But if I say, I make websites for, Michelin star restaurants, there's a lot fewer of them. But if I've, built my business around that, it might be a lot easier to get a lot of money from a Michelin star restaurant that wants a top-notch website for their restaurant. And I'm just using dumb examples here, but
Yeah.
but you get the idea. But it's if I turn around and I'm looking for a life coach, and they've got a life coach for people, and then another one says life coach for men who are serial entrepreneurs over 60 that have gray hair.
Wearing a blue shirt with LifeStarr on it.
Exactly. Oh my God, that's for me.
That's
But that's the thing that people have a tough time. They don't want to give up. Oh, there's so many opportunities, and if I narrow down, I'm going to lose all these other opportunities. But if you don't get any of them because nobody notices you, that's not great either. So niching down, you can always expand it, right? You can always make it bigger later. But niching down and really appealing to a smaller group of people is powerful, and I think not appreciated by a lot of small business owners.
Well, I'll tell you, that's not just true for technology either. That's
No.
almost true for every business, especially the people side, because as a business coach, I see many business owners that come to us and they're like, I can never leave the office and I'm stuck in the office. I can never get away. Well, you might look at your people, because if no one's smarter than you, that's why you're stuck in the office, because you're the only one that knows how to do it. And then on the flip side of that, I see business owners, I share with them, be humble, lose your ego, because, so many business owners, they won't hire somebody smarter than them because they're afraid of many things like, well, they'll take over my business. They'll be telling me what to do, and I don't want that. That's not why I own, so get over yourself. In other words, business owners.
I love it when people tell me if smart people tell me what,
Exactly.
don't do that, do this. I'm like, oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's why you hire them. But, it's hard for some people. And there is that risk. I know a guy, and he ran a really good landscaping company, and he just, he did really good work. He had really good equipment. Just really great. And he had this guy working for him, and that guy was great. Well, eventually that guy said, you know what? I can do this too. And he went off and started his own company in competition. That's a risk. But you know what? This guy didn't go out of business. He struggled because he was relying on that guy, and he had trouble replacing him. But he didn't go out of business because of it. And, he probably wouldn't have gotten to where he got to without that guy helping him in the early days. So, it's business has risks, and everything changes and ends. And, that's the worst thing in the world is not somebody helps you grow your business and then, spreads wings and flies away. The worst case is you never get off the ground, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And something you haven't said directly, but just through your journey, what I'm realizing is we have a lot of business owners that come to us and they just want a checklist. They're like, tell me what to do, when to do it. And then for some magical reason, they think they never have to do anything again. Like they just want this business. Okay, it can run without me. No, 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 no. Look at your journey. It's like, no, I'm always pivoting. I'm always moving. There's always a challenge. The internet came and disrupted what I had planned, and it's just the needle's always moving. So business owners, that's a powerful lesson for those that just think you're going to have this business fixed and never have to do anything again. That's not how it works. And we're hearing that from your story. Let's keep talking about your tech journey so we can get to what you're doing today.
Yeah. So, I mean, well, let me continue on your last question, which is advice. One thing that people don't do, and I'm guilty of this, is as you're starting a business, you got to start with why. Why do you want to start a business? Okay. And if the answer is, I don't like my job, well, maybe that's a good reason to start a business. Maybe you should find another job. Some people aren't built to be in business for themselves. So the point is you should have a why and goals that make sense. And that's one of the things that leads me into what LifeStarr, which is what I'm doing now. But this whole idea of having some goals, your goal probably wasn't to be in the office all the time, like for most people at least. And so, there is where when you start a business and say, I don't want to be in the, I want to have a certain amount of free time. Well, how are you going to build a business around the ability to do that? And that might force your hand into hiring smarter people.
Yeah. Right.
So it's always good to start there. And so that brings me to, I guess, the latest chapter, because as I mentioned, I sold Trade Area Systems in 2020 to Calibrate, and then I sold off most of my real estate holdings, the shopping center stuff, in the next few years. But what I did then was I had an idea for an app, and if you go back to that whole thing with my first company, I wanted to buy technology, couldn't find anything that was worth buying to figure out where to put shopping centers. And that's why I really ended up building my own. And so I wanted to buy an app, and I couldn't find it anywhere. So I said, you know what, I'm going to build that app. So after I sold Trade Area Systems, I said, I'm going to start building this app. And the idea for the app was basically a task management tool that let me work with anybody. So it was kind of like, Asana meets Facebook, right? I could connect it with anybody that wanted to go on there. There was going to be a free version of it, maybe ad supported, and started building this thing. And my Carly Reese, who I'm writing the book with, she does the marketing. She said, we should target solopreneurs because they don't have teams. So they need a tool like this because they don't even have teams. And I said, brilliant, let's do it. Where do we find solopreneurs? And we looked around, we couldn't find any place to find them. There was no place for one-person businesses. There were places for people that were building SaaS companies and places for people like, that were just, small businesses, but nothing for the one-person business. And I said, oh, that's a bummer. And then I looked and found out there were 60 to 70 million of them with the side hustles. And I said, I cannot believe there's no place for these people to come together. Did a survey of over 300 one-person businesses and found out that most of them share the same problems regardless of their industry. And I said, you know what, let's build that place instead. And the app is kind of on hold, and we're building out and releasing momentarily something called LifeStarr Central, which is a place on the internet, and it's just got all kinds of stuff for solopreneurs. So we've got tons of searchable content. We've got both free and paid tiers, but overall, we've got, an AI trained to answer business questions from a solopreneur perspective. We've got a library of videos of speakers on topics directed completely at solopreneurs, community, ask questions, office hours on different topics related to solopreneurship, marketing and accounting and using a CRM and all this different topics that people need help on. They can just pop in and ask a question. So we're just building this entire place for one person businesses. And as I mentioned earlier, trying to keep the price really reasonable so that people can afford to do it. You know, because solopreneurs, again, you choose solopreneurship, you got reasons you're doing that. You're not going to entrepreneurship. And the reasons shouldn't be, I'm going to get rich, or I'm going to work 4 hours a week and make $10,000 a month. Because yeah, it's been done, but you know, lots of things have been done by somebody, but not by everybody. So we're helping people in regular businesses. They're coaches, they're consultants, they're contractors, they're, you know, basically, you know, some are entrepreneurial, but definitely don't want employees. We have one guy, his name is San Hong, and he's like, I used to define how successful I was by how many employees I had. And he goes, now it's the opposite.
Yeah.
It's like how many employees I don't have. He's like, he's one person business. He's using contractors for everything. And that's just the kind of life he wants to live. He just wants to keep it, you know, more simple. And so it's just one of those things where, you know, if you think through your why, then we wanted to build a place to help people first take that step of thinking, why are you doing this? You know, what are your goals? And then helping them build the business around those goals so you don't wake up finding yourself in the office, you know, every day until 8:30 at night. And or, you know, whatever it is that your goals are, but helping people avoid the mistakes, see the pitfalls, and just build a business that works for their life.
Yeah, it's a very robust site. You said it's kind of in the works, but for those that are considering starting a business, there's even topics on here like you're not sure what kind of business to start, and then there's show me how to start. You know, there's a lot of stuff, and it looks like it's for different seasons of solopreneurship. Is that what I'm seeing? Yeah.
Yeah. What I've created something called the Solopreneur Success Cycle, and so it's basically a flywheel model. It starts with the goals, right? So I call it step 0 because everybody skips it. So start with defining your goals and your why. And then there's a process of basically envisioning your business, right? What might it look like? Let me think, you know, just imagine it, you know, start with that. And then basically go in and you know, figuring out what you actually want to do. And then making those decisions, then building out the business, you know, actually setting it up. And then you run the business. But as you run the business, you're learning from it. And this is something we chatted about, you know, offline beforehand. But, you know, the whole process of running a business it should always be a learning experience because things are going wrong. And every time something goes wrong, you wind up firefighting. And firefighting is the biggest time waster. So with me, and I mentioned to you, I had a property management business, still do, but that was a great example. We had a small team of people, and every time something went wrong, we brainstormed and said, what caused this? How do we fix it? So we never made the same mistake twice. And same thing with the enterprise software company. You know, I think we were a little more stressed with that one, but we would eventually stop making the mistake.
Yeah.
But the idea is you learn from it. So then you're operating and learning and taking notes, not just fixing, because sometimes fixing's a big deal, but at least noting the problems as you're operating. Then you go into a phase of you know, kind of refining your business, maybe even reimagining it depending on how it's going, but using all that stuff you've learned about what went wrong to refine your business or reimagine it. So you think through, what could I change? Make a decision what things you're actually going to try to change, because some things might be too heavy a lift right now, and then make the changes, and then you're back to operating. But you're going through this cycle. You know, you get started, and then you're cycling around and continually learning and fixing on some schedule that makes sense for your business. Maybe it's once a year, maybe it's every 6 months, maybe it's every quarter. But having that process of fixing problems lets you, it really can help people stay out of that. I'm in the office till 8:30 every night. Because usually that's firefighting.
Yeah, for sure. And the things you just described, that's every entrepreneur. Most business owners that come to us, they've never started with why. They don't even know their North Star. I call those guiding principles. Like, where do you even want to go? Why are you doing this? Because if you don't know, how are you going to get anybody else on board? So, and there's a lot of topics on here that I think any entrepreneur that's in that position could really benefit from. And it shows you have a podcast. You want to throw that out here?
Sure. We have a podcast called The Aspiring Solopreneur. And it's really for people that are thinking about getting started or want to kind of think through maybe different ways or better ways to run their solopreneur business. It's available anywhere that there's podcasts. I co-host it with Carly Reese, the marketing person. So I come at it from this business perspective. She talks about the marketing stuff because that's one of the biggest challenges for most, at least most solo businesses, is marketing and sales. And so we cover these topics. We bring on experts to discuss things. We do twice a week, once with interview with an expert, and the other one is just Carly and I taking on a topic and kind of working through it. And yeah, it's I feel really good about it. I listen to it and I go, that I wish I had been able to hear that 20, 30 years ago
Yeah,
before
I
there were
know. I know.
podcasts.
That's yeah. I do the same thing. So LifeStarr, that's LIFESTA
2
2Rs.com.
R's.
So I
And
encourage
not the
listeners.
helicopter, not the
What's that?
medevac helicopter, not the medevac helicopter
Oh,
company.
yeah.
That's one with 1 R.
Oh, yeah.
But
Well, I encourage everybody to go check that out. Check out the podcast. And I believe you have just wet people's whistle. They probably want to follow you, learn more. What's the best way to
absolutely.
do that? Social media? Any channels you
Yeah,
prefer?
I'm mostly on LinkedIn. Joe Rando. You will, if you do the LinkedIn.com/ins, I think /Joe Rando will bring you to me. But just if you search me, you'll see this big head of gray hair, and I show up, pretty much close to the top at least. So that way, you can, if you come to the website lifestarr.com, you can sign up for something called LifeStarr Intro, which is free. It'll give you access to free events. We do 2 free events a month. We have a newsletter, a weekly newsletter, and just we'll keep you informed on different things that are going on. And that's all free, will be free forever. But yeah, just go to lifestarr.com and just, I think it says join the movement right now. So you can just join the movement. And like I said, it's free forever. So hopefully see you there.
Yes, and it brings up a question before we sign off here. So, what about the entrepreneurs that are solopreneurs now? So, in other words, they've started a business, they are flying solo, they intend to grow a business, but who knows when that might be? Maybe would this be beneficial for them as well?
I think it would. I mean, the only thing is, one of the things that we're trying to differentiate ourselves around is the idea of people that are doing solopreneurship because there's a higher goal than scaling, right? So if you're a solopreneur because you want to be an entrepreneur, but you don't have the money to hire employees, but basically scaling is everything, it's probably not the place for you, because there's plenty of places for people
Yeah.
like that. There are just, tons of people out there that are helping people scale businesses. So ours is more about people that are choosing solopreneurship because there's some other thing that, they want to have a business. It might be they only want to do the work they want to do. It might be that they want to be able to go to their kids' games, or go skiing when the weather's right. I mean, it could be 1,000 things, but the main thing is, if you're trying to scale, if you want to scale a business, the idea of foregoing employees, for the long term, doesn't make any sense. They're your most powerful scaling tool.
Yeah.
So, and contractors are great. I love working with contractors, but it's not the same as an employee. You
Right.
don't have the same say. If you do have the same say, you're violating, at least in the United States, you're violating tax laws, and you could wind up getting sued and lose a lot of money. So don't do that. But yeah, so you've got this decision you've made to forego employees, and probably with good reason. But knowing those reasons and then finding ways to make sure that those reasons, those goals are being met, is what we're all about.
So you're sticking to your standard. You know your vision, who this is for. So nicely
Correct.
done. Well, I always
Thank
end our
you.
show with one question. You can take a second to think about it. If you were in a room full of entrepreneurs, business owners, all solopreneurs, different sizes of business, been in business different lengths of time, what's something that's applicable for all of them? It could be a quote, it could be an insight, or it could be a book.
Sure. I'm going to go to my go-to book for any human being, which is, it's old now, but I don't think some books don't really get old. It's called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. That book kind of set the direction of my life. And I've read that book many times. I've never regretted what it did in terms of the trajectory of my life, because it solidified things for me. So, I don't think anybody can really get hurt by reading that book.
It's a great book. And as I always say, learn to earn. Well, Joe, you've been a blessing to many and a wealth of knowledge. I appreciate you being with us today, and I'm sure our listeners do too. Please go follow Joe. Thanks again. I wish you continued success.
Thank you, Michael. You too.
My pleasure. Thank you for listening to Small Business Pivots. This podcast is created and produced by my company, Boss. Our business is growing yours. Boss offers flexible business loans with business coaching support. Apply in minutes and get approved and funded in as little as 24 to 48 hours at businessownershipsimplified.com. If you're enjoying this podcast, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and share it as well. If you need help growing your business, email me at michael@michaeldmorrison.com. We'll see you next time on Small Business Pivots.